So what if I told you that the most powerful tool for shaping your health, for deciding how long and how well you live, wasn't in some high-tech hospital or a pharmacy, but it was sitting right there in your kitchen? Okay, let's get into this, because the science is pretty clear. We have way more control over our own health destiny than most of us have ever been led to believe.
Just let that sink in for a second. A doctor gives you a death sentence at 65, and you go on to live for another 31 years. How on earth is that even possible? Well, this isn't some made-up story. It's a real-life event that actually kicked off a medical revolution. And that's exactly where we're going to start.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to unpack that unbelievable story of survival. Then we'll take a hard look at the diseases we're all really up against. From there, we'll uncover the incredible power you have on your plate, how you can literally rewrite your genetic destiny, and, I promise, we'll finish with a super simple, practical first step you can take the minute this is over.
So who was this woman who basically looked at her diagnosis and said, no thank you? Her name was Frances Greger, and her story is deeply personal for the author of the book this is based on, Dr. Michael Greger, because you see, she was his grandma. I mean, can you imagine? By the time she was 65, she was already in a wheelchair, dealing with this crushing chest pain. Her doctors had tried everything in their playbook. They'd done all the bypasses they could, and finally, they just threw up their hands and basically told her, sorry, there's nothing else we can do for you. But here's where the story takes a turn. Instead of just going home and accepting it, Frances heard about this pioneering program run by a guy named Nathan Pritikin. She completely, radically changed her diet, focusing only on whole, plant-based foods. And you know what happened? Within weeks, she was out of that wheelchair and walking again. She didn't just stop the disease in its tracks, she actually reversed what doctors told her was irreversible, and went on to live to be 96. And that experience, well, it sent her grandson on a lifelong mission to figure out why this wasn't on the cover of every newspaper.
And that really brings us to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? Before you can find the solution, you've got to know what you're fighting. So what are these diseases that are most likely to cut our lives short?
Just look at the scale of this, and this is just the top 3 that the book covers. Heart disease alone, 375,000 people every single year in the US. But here's the absolute game changer, the insight that changes everything. For most of these top killers, these deaths are not inevitable. They are directly linked to our lifestyle and, more than anything, to what we eat.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The one that drove Dr. Greger's work. If we have a proven way to stop our #1 killer, why isn't every doctor talking about it? Why isn't this the first thing they teach you in health class?
Well, the short answer is, our whole medical system is basically built backward. It's designed for intervention, for treating diseases after they show up, usually with a pill or a procedure. There's just not as much focus or, frankly, as much money in prevention. You can patent and sell a pill for $1 billion. You can't really patent a carrot. And this, right here, is the most empowering part of this entire conversation. We don't have to just sit back and wait to get sick. We can actively, every single day, build up our body's defenses. And the greatest weapon in our arsenal is the food we choose to put on our plate.
You know, when you really boil it down, we're faced with 2 basic paths at every meal. The path on the left, full of ultra-processed stuff, certain animal products, refined grains, that's the path that fuels inflammation and literally helps build chronic disease over time. But the path on the right, packed with vibrant, whole plant foods loaded with nutrients, that's the path that fights inflammation and builds a foundation of health. The science is just crystal clear about which path leads where.
Okay, I want you to stop for a second, because this is a really big one. So many of us think, oh, well, heart disease runs in my family, so my fate is sealed. That is one of the biggest, most damaging myths out there. Because the science tells a completely different story.
This is where we get into this amazing field called epigenetics. It's the science that shows that, yeah, you're born with a certain set of genes, but your lifestyle choices act like a series of light switches, telling those genes whether to turn on or stay off.
So think about it like this. You might carry a gene that makes you more likely to get a certain disease, but the food you eat can literally send a message to that gene telling it to stay quiet, to stay dormant. And here's the really wild part. These changes can happen fast. We're talking significant shifts in gene expression in just a few months, sometimes even weeks. You are the conductor of your own genetic orchestra, and you can change the music starting with your very next meal.
And if that's not cool enough, check this out. You know the little plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces that keep them from fraying? Well, you have something similar on your DNA called telomeres. They protect your chromosomes. Every time your cells divide, they get a tiny bit shorter, and that's a key part of aging. But guess what? Studies have found that a healthy plant-based diet can actually turn on an enzyme that helps rebuild them. You can literally help slow down the aging process at a cellular level. How amazing is that?
This really brings it all home, doesn't it? This isn't about some vague concept in the distant future. The choice you make for lunch today is either actively protecting your DNA or it's helping to wear it down. It makes every bite feel just a little bit more meaningful.
Okay, so after hearing all that, I know it can feel a little overwhelming. You might be thinking, great, so now I have to throw out everything in my kitchen and completely change my life tomorrow. No, absolutely not. The goal here isn't perfection, it's just progress. So how do you start? It's so much simpler than you think. The trick is to focus on adding in the good stuff, not just taking out the bad. Just add a handful of greens to whatever you're already eating. Swap that one bag of pretzels for an apple. Or just try one meal this week, just one, that's built around beans or lentils. These tiny little steps, they're how you build a whole new foundation for health.
So let's just quickly recap the most important things to remember. First, our biggest killers are not a matter of bad genes or bad luck. For the most part, they are preventable. Second, a diet centered around whole plant foods is an incredibly powerful tool for both preventing and even reversing disease. Third, you, yes you, have the power to influence how your genes behave. And finally, it all starts with small, consistent changes.
You see, this isn't about deprivation or what you can't have. This is about empowerment. It's about realizing that every single meal, 3 times a day, is a new opportunity to build a stronger, healthier, more resilient you. The science is there. The power is literally in your hands. The only question left is, what will you choose to do with it?